The smell hit Jinho first. It was a mix of fear, unwashed bodies, and the metallic tang of chains. He pulled his cargo jacket tighter around his shoulders as he walked through the lower levels of Nexus Station. This was not where decent people came to do business. Jinho was a cargo pilot. He flew supplies between the outer rim worlds and the core systems. It was honest work that paid enough to send money back to his family on Earth. His younger sister Minji was studying to become a doctor, and every credit he earned helped pay for her education. Today, he was delivering medical supplies to the station. Clinic. The job should have been simple. Load the cargo, get the payment receipt, and leave. But Jinho had taken a wrong turn in the maze-like lower levels of the station. Now he found himself in a part of Nexus Station that most people pretended did not exist: the slave markets. Nexus Station sat in the lawless region between three major galactic territories. No single government controlled it. That meant no laws protected the weak here. Pirates sold stolen cargo, mercenaries traded weapons, and slavers sold living beings like they were pieces of furniture. Jinho knew these places existed. Everyone in the galaxy knew. But seeing it with his own eyes made his stomach turn. Cages lined the walls of the massive underground chamber. Each cage held a different species. Some he recognized. Others were completely alien to him. The buyers walked between the cages like they were shopping for vegetables. They poked and prodded the prisoners. They checked teeth and muscles. They spoke in loud voices about which slaves would work best in their mines or factories. Jinho tried to find the exit. He did not want to be here, but the crowd of buyers blocked his path. He was trapped in the middle of the slave market. A loud voice boomed across the chamber. "Ladies and gentlemen, the auction begins now." The voice belonged to a massive alien with gray skin and 4 arms. Jinho recognized the species, Vorthak. They were known throughout the galaxy as brutal warriors who conquered weaker worlds and sold the survivors into slavery. This particular Vorthak wore expensive clothes covered in golden chains. Jeweled rings decorated each of his 4 hands. A name tag on his chest said, "Thorgrim, Senior Auctioneer." Thorgrim stood on a raised platform in the center of the chamber. Behind him, a line of cages held the slaves that would be sold today. Guards with shock weapons stood around the platform to keep order. "First item today," Thorgrim announced with a cruel smile, "a strong Rigelian male. Perfect for heavy mining work. Bidding starts at 500 credits. The crowd surged forward. Voices shouted out bids. Within minutes, the Rigelian was sold to a mine owner for 3,000 credits. The slave was dragged away in chains. Jinho felt sick. He pushed through, the crowd trying to reach the exit. But another auction had already begun. "Next, we have a rare prize," Thorgrim called out. "A female from the recently conquered world of Felixa." 2 guards dragged a small figure onto the platform. Jinho stopped, walking. His breath caught in his throat. The slave was barely 5 feet tall. Her body was covered in soft golden fur. 2 cat-like ears sat on top of her head. A long tail swished nervously behind her. Her large golden eyes were filled with tears. She was a Felixian. Jinho had heard about their world being attacked 6 months ago. The Vorthak had invaded without warning. Most of the population had been killed. The survivors were taken as slaves. The Felixian girl could not have been more than 20 years old in human terms. She wore torn clothes that had once been white. Her fur was dirty and matted. Bruises covered her arms and legs. But what made Jinho's heart break was her expression. She was trying so hard to be brave. She kept her head up even as tears rolled down her cheeks. Her small hands were clenched into fists at her sides. "Look at this pathetic creature," Thorgrim laughed. He grabbed the girl's chin and forced her to look at the crowd. "Felixians are known for being weak and emotional, but they have their uses: small size for crawling through tight spaces, good eyesight for detail work." The crowd laughed along, with Thorgrim. Someone shouted, Does it come with a litter box? More laughter filled the chamber. The Phylixian girl flinched at each cruel joke, but she did not break. She kept staring straight ahead with as much dignity as she could manage. Bidding. Starts at 50 credits, Thorgrim announced. Come now, surely someone wants a pet. 50 credits. That was less than Jinho spent on lunch. They were pricing this girl's entire life at the cost of a meal. A few half-hearted bids came from the crowd. 75. 100. 125. The IE bidding was slow. Most buyers were not interested. Phylixians had a reputation for being too soft for hard labor, too emotional to be reliable servants. The girl represented a poor investment to most slave owners. 150 going once, Thorgrim called out. The current high bidder was a thin alien with too many teeth. He kept making comments about what he planned to do with the girl that made Jinho's hands ball into fists. The Phylixian girl's shoulders started to shake. She was losing her battle against despair. Her golden eyes darted around the room looking for any sign of hope or mercy. Her gaze met Jinho's across the crowded chamber. In that moment, Jinho saw something that reminded him of his sister Minji. Not the physical appearance, but the spirit. The determination to stay strong even when the world was crushing down around you. Minji had looked the same way when their parents died in a transport crash. She had been only 16, scared and alone. But she had refused to give up on her dream of becoming a doctor. 150, going twice, Thorgrim announced. The Phylixian girl closed her eyes. A single tear rolled down her furry cheek. Jinho's mind raced. He thought about his cargo ship waiting in the docking bay. He thought about his savings account back on Earth. He thought about the contract in his jacket pocket that guaranteed him steady work for the next 5 years. He thought about, Minji and what she would want him to do. 200, Jinho heard himself shout. The chamber fell silent. Every head turned to look at him. Thorgrim's 4 eyes narrowed as he spotted the human in the crowd. 200 from the human, Thorgrim called out with amusement. Any advance? On 200. The previous bidder shook his head and stepped back. No one else seemed interested in competing with a human over a worthless Phylixian. 200 going once. Going twice. Thorgrim paused for dramatic effect. Sold to the human for 200 credits. But as Jinho stepped forward to pay, he realized he had made a terrible mistake. 200 credits would not be enough. Under galactic law, he could not actually free the girl by buying her. He would only become her new owner, and he had no idea what to do next. Jinho stood frozen in the middle of the slave auction. The Phylixian girl was now legally his property, but he had no plan for what came next. Around him, the crowd was already losing interest and moving on to the next auction. 2 Vorthak guards approached him. The larger one carried a data pad and wore a bored expression. Payment and processing fee, the guard grunted. 200 credits plus 50 for paperwork. Jinho reached for his wallet, but his hands were shaking. 250 credits would empty his personal account. But that was not the real problem. Even if he bought the girl, she would still be a slave under galactic law. The only thing that would change is who owned her. He looked across the platform where the Phylixian girl waited between 2 guards. She was watching him with confusion, in her golden eyes. She probably could not understand why a human had bid on her. Payment now, or we put her back up for auction, the guard demanded. Jinho was about to hand over his credit chip when another voice cut through the noise. Wait. Thorgrim himself was walking toward them. The massive Vorthak pushed through the crowd with his 4 arms spread wide. I want to speak with this human. The guard stepped back respectfully. Thorgrim was clearly someone important in the dual slave trade. His expensive clothes and golden chains marked him as wealthy and dangerous. You are human, yes? Thorgrim asked, studying Jinho with all 4 of his black eyes. Yes, Jinho replied, trying to keep his voice steady. Interesting. Thorgrim circled around him like a predator studying prey. Humans rarely come to our markets. Most of your species claim to find slavery distasteful. I was just lost, Jinho lied. I took a wrong turn trying to find the medical bay. Thorgrim laughed, a sound like grinding metal. Lost, he says. And yet you bid on merchandise. Tell me, human, what do you plan to do with a Phylixian slave? Jinho's mind raced. He could not tell the truth. If Thorgrim knew he wanted to free the girl, there would be complications. Slave owners did not like their property being liberated. Labor, Jinho said finally. My cargo ship needs maintenance work. Someone small enough to crawl through the ventilation systems. Ah, Thorgrim nodded approvingly. A practical choice, though I should warn you, Phylixians are fragile creatures. They do not handle hard work well. I will manage, Jinho replied, but Thorgrim was not finished with his questions. What ship do you fly, human? What cargo do you carry? Independent. Freighter, Jinho answered. The Lucky Dragon. I transport medical supplies and food between the rim worlds. Thorgrim's eyes lit up with interest. A ship owner. How fortunate. He leaned closer to Jinho. I have a proposition for you. What kind of proposition? Your Phylixian is worth very little as she is, Thorgrim explained. Weak, emotional, barely trained. But I have ways to make her more valuable, more obedient. Jinho felt sick at the implication. What are you suggesting? Conditioning, Thorgrim said with a cruel smile. A few weeks in our training facility, we remove the defiance, the tears, the useless emotions. When we are finished, you will have a perfectly obedient worker. No, Jinho said quickly. Too quickly. Thorgrim's expression changed. The friendly merchant mask slipped away, revealing the brutal slaver underneath. No. That is an interesting response from someone who claims to want a laborer. The crowd around them had grown quiet. Other buyers were starting to watch the conversation with interest. Jinho realized he had made a mistake by refusing so firmly. I mean, Jinho said, trying to recover, I need her to start working immediately. I cannot wait for training. Of course, Thorgrim said, but his tone suggested he did not believe the explanation. Well then, let us complete your purchase. He gestured to the guards, who brought the Phylixian girl forward. She stumbled slightly as they pushed her toward Jinho. Up close, he could see that she was even younger than he had thought. Barely more than a child. 200 credits, Thorgrim said, plus processing fees. Jinho handed over his credit chip. The guard ran it through a scanner and nodded. Payment confirmed, but Thorgrim held up one of his 4 hands. Actually, I have changed my mind about the price. What do you mean? Jinho asked. 200 credits is far too little for such a rare specimen, Thorgrim announced loudly. Phylixians are nearly extinct now. This may be one of the last of her kind, the crowd murmured with interest. Several buyers who had ignored the previous auction were now paying attention. The price is now 5,000 credits, Thorgrim declared. Jinho's heart sank. He did not have 5,000 credits. His entire savings account contained less than 3,000. But we already agreed on 200. We agreed before I realized her true value, Thorgrim replied. If you cannot afford the new price, I will put her back up for auction. Already other buyers were calling out bids. 6,000. 7,000. The price was rising rapidly now that Thorgrim had created artificial demand. Jinho looked at the Phylixian girl. She was watching the bidding with growing horror. She understood what was happening. If someone else bought her, her fate would be sealed. 8,000, called out a voice from the crowd. It was the thin alien with many teeth, who had been bidding before. Jinho made a decision that would change his life forever. I bid my ship, he announced loudly. The entire chamber fell silent. Even Thorgrim looked surprised. Your ship? Thorgrim asked. The Lucky Dragon? Full ownership papers. plus my savings account of 3,000 credits, plus a signed contract. For 5 years of labor in the Nexus mining operations. The crowd gasped. Jinho was offering his entire future. His freedom, his livelihood, everything he owned. Thorgrim's 4 eyes glittered with greed. A cargo ship was worth at least 50,000 credits. 5 years of contracted labor was worth another 20,000. The total value of Jinho's bid was enormous. Accepted, Thorgrim said immediately. As the papers were signed and the deal was finalized, Jinho felt a strange sense of peace. He had lost everything he owned. In 3 days, he would report to the mining facility to begin 5 years of dangerous labor that might kill him. But when he looked into the Phylixian girl's golden eyes and saw hope replace despair, he knew he had made the right choice. "Why?" she whispered in broken galactic standard. Jinho smiled and gently took her hand. "Because it was right." The lucky dragon felt different now that it no longer belonged to Jinho. He had 3 days before he had to surrender the ship and report for his mining contract. 3 days to figure out what to do with the Phylixian girl he had bought with his entire future. She sat in the corner of his small cabin, knees drawn up to her chest. Her golden fur was still matted and dirty from weeks in the slave pens. She had not spoken since they left the auction house. Jinho set a bowl of water and a plate of food on the floor near her, then backed away to give her space. He had learned that approaching too quickly frightened her. "My name is Jinho," he said softly. "What should I call you?" The girl looked up at him with those large golden eyes. For a moment he thought she would not answer. Then, in a voice barely, above a whisper, she said, "Nari." "Nari," Jinho repeated. "That is a beautiful name." She flinched when he said it, as if hearing her own name caused pain. "Why did you buy me?" she asked. Jinho sat down on his bunk, keeping distance between them. "Because no one should be bought and sold like property." "But now I belong to you," Nari said. Her voice was flat, emotionless. "What do you want me to do?" The question broke Jinho's heart. This girl had been broken by slavery. She expected to be used and abused because that was all she had known for months. "I want you to eat something," Jinho said gently. "Then maybe take a shower if you want to. The bathroom is through that door." Nari stared at him in confusion. "You do not want me to work?" "Not today. Today you rest." She looked at the food suspiciously, then took a small bite. Her ears perked up slightly at the taste. It was probably the first decent meal she had eaten in months. While Nari ate, Jinho's communicator chimed. A message appeared on the screen from Captain Reese, his employer and friend. "Jinho, what the hell have you done? I just got word from station security that you signed a mining contract. Call me immediately." Jinho sighed and activated the comm system. Captain Reese's weathered face appeared on the screen. He was an older human who had been running cargo ships for 30 years. "There you are," Reese said. "Please tell me this is some kind of mistake. Please tell me you did not just sign your life away to the Nexus Mining Consortium." "I cannot tell you that," Jinho replied. "Why?" Reese demanded. "What could possibly make you do something so stupid?" Jinho glanced at Nari, who was listening to the conversation while she ate. "I had my reasons." "Reasons?" "The mining operation kills half their workers in the first year. The other half dies slowly from radiation poisoning. This is not a job, it is a death sentence." "I know what I did," Jinho said firmly. Reese's expression softened. "Look, kid, I know you have been sending money home to your sister. If you needed credits, you could have asked me for an advance. This was not about money." "Then what?" Reese's eyes narrowed as he noticed movement in the background. "Who is that with you?" Before Jinho could answer, Nari stepped into view of the camera. Captain Reese's mouth fell open. "Is that a Phylixian?" he asked. "Her name is Nari," Jinho said. "You bought a slave." Reese's voice was filled with disappointment. I never thought you were that kind of person, Jinho. It is not what you think. Jinho started to explain, but Nari spoke first. He saved me, she said in her soft voice. The human gave up everything to keep me from being sold to bad people. Reese looked back and forth between them. You signed a death contract to save a slave girl you had never met before? Yes, Jinho said simply. There was a long silence. Finally, Reese shook his head. You are either the bravest person I know or the biggest fool in the galaxy. Maybe both, Jinho admitted. After the call ended, Nari approached him slowly. She had used the shower and cleaned herself up. Her golden fur was now soft and shiny. She looked much younger without the dirt and fear. Tell me about your sister, she said, settling onto the floor near his bunk. Minji? How did you know I have a sister? You looked at me the same way I used to look at my little brother, Nari explained. Before the Vorthak came. Jinho felt his throat tighten. What happened to your family? Gone, Nari said simply. All gone. My parents, my brother, my friends. The Vorthak killed anyone who tried to fight. The rest of us they took as slaves. I am sorry, Jinho said. Do not be sorry. Be proud. Nari looked at him with admiration. Your sister is lucky to have a brother who would sacrifice everything for what is right. They talked through the night. Nari told him about her life before the invasion. She had been a xenobiologist, studying how different species could work together. Her research had focused on cooperation and mutual aid between alien races. Most species in the galaxy only care about themselves, she explained. They help others only when it benefits them. But your people are different. Humans sometimes help others even when it costs them everything. Not all humans are like that, Jinho said. No, Nari agreed. But enough are. That is what makes you special. As dawn approached, Jinho realized something had changed. The frightened slave girl was gone, replaced by an intelligent young scientist who had simply been broken by trauma. Given kindness and safety, her true personality was emerging. I need to figure out how to free you legally, Jinho said. There must be some way to break the ownership contract. Nari shook her head. There is no legal way. Under galactic law, I am property now. Your property. Then I will find an illegal way. No. Nari's voice was firm. You have already sacrificed too much. I will not let you make things worse. So what do we do? Nari was quiet for a long moment, thinking. When she finally spoke, her voice was filled with determination. We find a way to save your life instead, she said. You saved me from slavery. Now I will save you from the mines. How? I do not know yet, Nari admitted, but I am a scientist. I will figure something out. The next morning, Dr. Yuna arrived at the ship. She was the station's chief medical officer and one of Jinho's few friends on Nexus Station. She was also furious. Have you lost your mind? She demanded as soon as she stepped aboard. A mining contract? Really? Hello to you too, Yuna. Jinho said. Dr. Yuna was a small Korean woman with steel-gray hair and the bedside manner of an angry professor. She had been working on frontier stations for 15 years, patching up miners, pilots, and mercenaries. Do not joke about this, she snapped. I have treated workers from the mining consortium, the ones who survive long enough to make it to my clinic. Radiation burns, lung damage, broken bones. It is not work, it is murder. I know the risks, Jinho said. Then why? Dr. Yuna demanded. Nari appeared from the back of the ship. Dr. Yuna stopped talking and stared at the young Felixian. Oh, Dr. Yuna said quietly. I see. She examined Nari carefully, checking for injuries and signs of abuse. Her anger at Jinho faded as she worked. She was lucky you found her, Dr. Yuna told him later. A few more weeks in those conditions and she would not have survived. So you understand why I did it? Dr. Yuna sighed. I understand. But that does not mean I approve. There had to be another way. There was not time to think of another way. Well, Dr. Yuna said, we have 3 days. To think of one now. Taijin was a young Korean engineer who had been working on Nexus Station for 2 years. He maintained the mining equipment and knew every tunnel and service corridor in the asteroid field. When Jinho explained their situation, Taijin agreed to help immediately. The mining consortium is corrupt, Taijin said. They treat their workers like disposable tools. If there is a way to expose them, I want to be part of it. The plan was risky, but simple. Taijun would take Nari and Jinho on a routine maintenance run to the outer mining platforms. Once they were close enough to the main asteroid deposits, Nari would try her resonance cry to see if the Quantinium would respond. They left at dawn on Jinho's final day of freedom. Taijin piloted a small maintenance shuttle through the maze of mining platforms and processing stations. The asteroid field stretched out around them like a graveyard of floating rocks. The main deposits are about 10 kilometers ahead, Taejun said. According to the official surveys, there should only be trace amounts of Quantinium in this area. Nari pressed her face to the shuttle's window, studying the asteroids with her enhanced vision. I can see crystal formations in the rocks, she said. Lots of them. The scanners definitely missed something. As they approached the target area, Taejun received a communication from the Mining Control Center. Maintenance Shuttle 7, what is your status? Routine inspection of platform. 12, Taejun replied smoothly. Should be finished within the hour. Understood. Be advised that Administrator Koss will be conducting surprise inspections today. Stay clear of the main processing areas. Taejun switched off the comm and frowned. Administrator Koss is the most corrupt official on the station. If he is conducting surprise inspections, something important must be happening. They reached the outer edge of the asteroid field. Huge floating rocks drifted silently through space around them. Mining platforms clung to the larger asteroids like metal parasites, boring deep holes to extract valuable minerals. This is as close as I can get you, Taejun said. The main asteroid cluster is directly ahead. If your theory is correct, there should be Quantinium deposits throughout that entire region. Nari took a deep breath. I have never tried the resonance cry on such a large scale before. I am not sure what will happen. Only one way to find out, Jinho said. Nari closed her eyes and began to sing. The sound started as a whisper, barely audible even in the quiet shuttle. But it grew stronger and more complex, becoming a haunting melody that seemed to reach across space itself. For a moment, nothing happened. The asteroids continued their slow drift through the void. Then one small rock began to glow. The light started as a faint shimmer, like starlight reflecting off water. But it spread quickly from asteroid to asteroid, as if Nari's song was waking something that had been sleeping for millions of years. Within minutes, the entire asteroid field was blazing with soft golden light. Hundreds of floating rocks pulsed, in rhythm with Nari's song. It was the most beautiful thing Jinho had ever seen. Incredible, Taejun whispered. There must be enough Quantinium here to power the entire galaxy. But their celebration was cut short by an urgent communication from the Mining Control Center. All shuttles, return to base immediately. Unknown energy readings detected in Sector 7. Possible equipment malfunction. Taejun looked worried. We need to leave now. If they detect our shuttle in this area when the reading started, they will know we caused this. He turned the shuttle around and headed back toward the station. But they were too late. 3 security ships were already moving to intercept them. Maintenance Shuttle 7, you are ordered to dock at Platform 3 for inspection, came the radio command. What do we do? Taejun asked. Before Jinho could answer, the shuttle's emergency proximity alarms began blaring. A massive Vorthak warship was rising from behind one of the larger asteroids. It was Thorgrim's personal vessel. How did he find us? Jinho demanded. The answer came over the radio in Thorgrim's cruel voice. Did you really think you could hide from me, human? I have been tracking your every move since you left the slave market. The warship moved to block their escape route. More security ships appeared from other directions. They were surrounded. You have caused me considerable inconvenience, Thorgrim continued. First you disrupt my auction with your ridiculous bid. Now you interfere with official mining operations. I think it is time we had a proper conversation. Tajin tried to maneuver around the warship, but it was hopeless. The security ships were faster and better armed than their maintenance shuttle. I have an idea, Nari said suddenly, but it is very dangerous. What kind of idea? Jinho asked. My resonance cry did not just activate the quantinium deposits, she explained. It created a resonance field throughout the entire asteroid field. If I can amplify the frequency, I might be able to overload the energy systems on those ships. Might be able to? Taijun asked. I have never tried it before, Nari admitted. And if it does not work, the feedback could kill me. No, Jinho said, firmly. I will not let you risk your life for me again. You did not let me do anything the first time, Nari replied with a smile. You saved my life. Now I choose to save yours. Before Jinho could stop her, Nari began to sing again. But this time the song was different, louder, more intense, filled with harmonies that seemed to come from multiple voices. The effect was immediate and devastating. Every piece of quantinium in the asteroid field began to pulse in perfect synchronization. The combined energy output was enormous. The security ship's engines began to spark and smoke. Their electrical systems overloaded. One by one, they lost power and began to drift helplessly through space. Even Thorgrim's massive warship was affected. Emergency klaxons wailed as its power systems failed. The lights went out across its hull. Impossible. Thorgrim's voice crackled over the failing radio. What are you doing? But Nari's song was not finished. The resonance field continued to grow stronger. Quantinium deposits that had been dormant for eons were fully awakening. The entire asteroid field was turning into a massive energy beacon visible across the star system. Nari! Stop, Jinho pleaded. You are pushing too hard. Blood was running from Nari's nose and ears. The strain of controlling so much energy was overwhelming her small body, but she continued to sing. Suddenly, new ships appeared on their sensors. A full squadron of galactic enforcement vessels drawn by the massive energy readings. This is Commander Sora of the Galactic Enforcement Division, came a crisp voice over the radio. All vessels in this area are ordered to stand down immediately, Thorgrim tried to protest, but his ship's communication systems were failing. The enforcement ships surrounded his warship and the disabled security vessels. Only then did Nari finally stop singing. She collapsed in her seat, exhausted but alive. The asteroid field continued to glow with residual quantinium energy. Are you all right? Jinho asked, cradling her head. I think so, Nari whispered. But I have never felt anything like that before. It was like touching the heart of a star. Tajin was staring at his sensor readings in amazement. The energy output from this field is off the charts. You have just revealed the largest quantinium deposit in galactic history. Commander Sora's voice came over the radio again. Maintenance Shuttle 7, you are directed to dock with our command ship immediately. We have many questions for you. As they flew toward the enforcement vessel, Jinho realized their gambit had worked better than they could have hoped. Not only had they proven the existence of massive quantinium deposits, but they had also attracted the attention of galactic law enforcement. What happens now? Taejun asked as they docked with the command ship. Now we tell them the truth, Jinho said. All of it. Commander Sora met them at the airlock. She was a tall Korean woman with short gray hair and the bearing of a career military officer. Her uniform displayed medals from conflicts across the galaxy. I am Commander Sora, she said, studying the three of them carefully. We detected massive energy readings coming from this asteroid field, readings that suggest the presence of large quantinium deposits that were not reported in any official mining surveys. That is correct, Jinho said. And you are responsible for activating these deposits? Jinho looked at Nari, who nodded weakly. We are. Commander Sora's expression grew serious. Do you understand the implications of what you have done? If these deposits are as large as our sensors suggest, this could change the balance of power in the entire galaxy. We understand, Nari said, speaking for the first time since her ordeal. That is why we had to act. Commander Sora led them to a briefing room where they could explain everything. Jinho told her about the slave auction and his contract with the mining consortium. Nari explained her discovery about Felixian abilities and the resonance cry. Taijun provided technical data about the mining operations and the corruption he had witnessed among station officials. So you are claiming that the mining consortium knew about the quantinium deposits but failed to report them? Commander Sora asked. That is our theory, Jinho said. They classified the survey reports and dismissed the deposits as worthless. Trace amounts. If that is true, they have violated numerous galactic mining laws, Commander Sora said. Not to mention the illegal slavery operations we interrupted. Nari spent the next day in the station's public library, researching everything she could find about human behavior and psychology. She was determined to understand why Jinho had sacrificed everything for a stranger. The library was a small, poorly maintained section of Nexus Station that most people ignored, but it contained access to databases from across the galaxy. Nari worked through files on human history, culture, and biology. What she found surprised her. Humans were one of the youngest spacefaring species in the galaxy. They had only left their home world 300 years ago. Most other species had been traveling between stars for thousands of years, yet in that short time humans had earned a unique reputation. They were known for acts of selfless courage that other species found baffling. Human soldiers who died protecting alien civilians. Human doctors who risked their lives treating diseases on foreign worlds. Human pilots who flew rescue missions into dangerous territory. Irrational altruism, one scientific paper called it. Humans regularly engage in behavior that benefits others at great cost to themselves, even when the beneficiaries are not genetically related. Nari had never heard of any other species behaving this way. Most aliens helped their own families and tribes. Some formed alliances with other groups when it was mutually beneficial. But humans sometimes helped complete strangers for no logical reason. While reading about human psychology, Nari made another discovery. She found a detailed analysis of the asteroid mining operations around Nexus Station. The file was buried deep in the Geological Survey database, marked as classified. Her Felixian eyes were better than human ones at reading fine print. She could make out details that most species would miss. As she read through the mining reports, her heart began to race. The asteroids contained traces of something called quantinium. The element was mentioned only briefly in the reports, dismissed as trace deposits not worth extraction. But Nari recognized the name from her childhood. On Felixa, her grandmother had told stories about star tears, magical crystals that could power entire worlds with clean energy. The old legends described crystals that glowed with inner light and responded to the songs of her people. Nari pulled up everything she could find about quantinium in the galactic databases. What she learned made her hands shake with excitement. Quantinium was the most valuable substance in known space. A single crystal the size of her fist could power a space station for years. It burned clean with no radiation or waste. The energy it produced was almost unlimited. But there was a problem. Quantinium was incredibly rare. Only a few deposits had ever been found, and those had been exhausted centuries ago. The galaxy's energy crisis existed because no one had discovered new sources of quantinium. The mining reports claimed the asteroid field around Nexus Station contained only trace amounts of the element. But Nari suspected the surveys had been wrong. Quantinium was notoriously difficult to detect with standard scanning equipment. However, there was one way to find it that the ancient legends described. Phylixians had a special ability called the resonance cry. It was a sound beyond normal hearing that could make quantinium crystals glow. Most people thought it was just a myth. Nari had never tried to make the resonance cry. Her generation of Phylixians had lost most of their traditional abilities after centuries of technological dependence. But if the legends were true, she might be able to detect quantinium deposits that machines could not find. She left the library and hurried back to Jinho's ship. He was in the cargo bay, preparing to transfer his belongings to station quarters. Before reporting to the mines, "Jinho," she said breathlessly, "I need to test something." "What kind of test?" "I need you to find me a piece of quantinium. Even a tiny fragment will work." Jinho looked puzzled. "Quantinium? That stuff is worth more than entire planets. I doubt there is any on this station." "There might be," Nari said, "in the geology lab. Sometimes they keep samples of rare elements for research." It took 3 hours of searching, but Dr. Yuna finally helped them locate a microscopic quantinium sample in the station's science section. It was smaller than a grain of sand, stored in a sealed container. "This is worth about 10,000 credits, the lab technician warned them. "If you damage it, you will be paying for it for the rest of your lives." Nari took the container and closed her eyes. She tried to remember her grandmother's stories about the old songs, the melodies that could wake the sleeping stars. She opened her mouth and let out a sound that was barely audible to human ears. It was a low, thrumming note that seemed to come from deep in her chest. The sound grew stronger and more complex, becoming a wordless song. The quantinium sample began to glow. The light started as a faint shimmer, then grew brighter until it was visible even through the sealed container. The crystal pulsed in rhythm with Nari's song, as if it was alive and responding to her voice. Jinho stared in amazement. "How did you do that?" "Genetic memory," Nari whispered. "My people evolved alongside quantinium deposits on our homeworld. We developed the ability to find and activate the crystals." "But what does this mean?" Nari smiled for the first time since he had known her. "It means the mining surveys were wrong. If I can make this tiny sample glow, there must be massive deposits in the asteroid field. The scanners could not detect them because they are dormant. You are saying there is quantinium in the mines where I will be working?" "Not just some quantinium," Nari said. "I think there might be enough to change the entire galaxy." Dr. Yuna had been listening to their conversation with growing excitement. "Do you understand what this means?" she asked. "If the asteroid field is full of quantinium, it could solve the energy crisis. Clean power for every world in known space." "But how does this help us?" Jinho asked. "Even if you are right, the mining consortium owns the asteroid field. They would just become incredibly rich while I die working in their mines." Nari's expression grew serious. "Not if we can prove they do not know what they have. Under galactic law, any species that discovers a new quantinium deposit has claim rights to it. But humans did not discover it. You did." "No," Nari said firmly. "We discovered it together, a human and a Phylixian working as partners. That makes it a joint discovery." Dr. Yuna caught on to what Nari was suggesting. "If you can prove the deposits exist, you could file a joint claim. That would override the mining consortium's ownership rights. But I will still be bound by the labor contract," Jinho pointed out. "Not if the contract was signed under false pretenses," Dr. Yuna said. "If the consortium knew about the quantinium deposits and did not disclose them, the contract could be void." Nari nodded. "We need to prove they are lying about what is in those asteroids. And I think I know how to do it." "How?" "I need to get close enough to the mining operation to use my resonance cry on the actual asteroid field," Nari explained. "If there is as much quantinium as I suspect, the entire field will light up like a star." "That sounds dangerous," Jinho said. "Everything worthwhile is dangerous," Nari replied. "You risked your life to save mine. Now I am going to risk mine to save yours." But there was a problem with Nari's plan. The mining operations were heavily guarded. Unauthorized personnel were not allowed anywhere near the asteroid field. And as a registered slave, Nari would be arrested if she was found wandering the station alone. "We need help," Dr. Yuna said. "Someone with access to the mining areas." Jinho thought for a moment. "I might know someone. Taijin works in engineering, maintenance. He services the mining equipment. If anyone could get us close to the asteroid field, it would be him. Can you trust him?" "I think so. He has always seemed like a good person." Dr. Yuna shook her head. "This is insane. You are planning to sneak a valuable slave into a restricted mining area to test an ancient alien ability that might not even work." "Yes," Jinho said. "That is exactly what we are planning to do." "And if you are wrong about the quantinium deposits?" Jinho and Nari looked at each other. If they were wrong, Jinho would still report to the mines in 2 days, and Nari would remain a slave for the rest of her life. "Then at least we tried," Jinho said. The legal proceedings took place aboard Commander Sora's flagship, while the asteroid field continued to glow with activated quantinium energy. Representatives from a dozen different factions had arrived to contest the discovery claim. Thorgrim sat at one table with his lawyers, demanding the return of his stolen property. Administrator Koss and the mining consortium claimed prior ownership of the asteroid field. Even the Galactic Council had sent observers to monitor the proceedings. But the most important moment came when the Phylixian Refugee Council arrived. Jinho had never seen other members of Nari's species before. 3 adult Phylixians stepped off, their small transport ship, their golden fur marking them as survivors of the Vorthak invasion. They were led by an elderly female named Elder Hana. "We have come to witness the awakening," Elder Hana said in her soft voice. "Our sensors detected the great resonance from 3 star systems away." She approached Nari with tears in her large, golden eyes. "Child, we thought our people's gifts had died with our homeworld, but you have proven that the old songs still live." "I barely understand what I did," Nari admitted. "I was just trying to save my friend." Elder Hana smiled. "That is exactly why the Star Tiers responded to you. Our ancestors believed that quantinium only awakens for those who sing not for themselves, but for others." The revelation changed everything. Under recently passed Galactic Council resolutions, any species that possessed unique abilities related to quantinium discovery had special claim rights to deposits they activated. "This puts a new perspective on the legal situation," the Council observer noted. "If Phylixians have a genetic ability to detect and activate quantinium deposits, they may have prior claim rights that supersede all other ownership." Thorgrim jumped to his feet. "Impossible. The Phylixian is my legal property. Any discovery she makes belongs to me." Elder Hana's gentle expression hardened. "You speak of owning one of our children like she is an object, but slavery contracts cannot override species sovereignty rights." "What sovereignty rights?" Thorgrim demanded. "Phylixa was conquered. The survivors are stateless refugees." "Not anymore," Elder Hana said. She handed a document to the Council observer. "As of yesterday, the Galactic Council has granted the Phylixian refugees protected status and the right to establish a new colony world. We are no longer stateless." Commander Sora reviewed the document and nodded. "This appears to be authentic. If the Phylixians now have sovereign status, any slavery contracts involving their people would be automatically void." Jinho felt a surge of hope. If Nari was legally free, their partnership claim would be valid. But Thorgrim was not finished. "Even if the slavery contract is void, the human still owes 5 years of labor to the mining consortium. He cannot enter into business partnerships while under contract. Administrator Koss nodded eagerly. The labor contract is separate from the slave purchase. It remains valid regardless of other considerations. Commander Sora looked troubled. He may be right. The mining contract was signed voluntarily and witnessed by station officials. Jinho's heart sank. Even if Nari was free, he would still be bound to 5 years of dangerous labor. The discovery claim would belong to her alone, which meant she would be safe, but he would still face almost certain death in the mines. But Nari had been listening carefully to the legal arguments. "I have a question," she said, standing up with newfound confidence. "What if the mining contract was signed under false pretenses?" "What do you mean?" the council observer asked. Administrator Koss and the mining consortium claimed the asteroid field contained only trace amounts of quantinium, Nari explained, but we have proven that it actually contains the largest quantinium deposit in galactic history. They lied about what Jinho would be mining. Dr. Yuna, who had been watching the proceedings from the observer section, stepped forward. "I can support that claim. I have medical records from miners who worked that field. Many showed symptoms of quantinium exposure poisoning, which would be impossible if there were only trace amounts present." Tejan also came forward. "I have maintenance logs showing equipment failures consistent with high-energy quantinium interference." The consortium knew their surveys were wrong. Administrator Koss turned pale. "Those records are classified company documents," which is itself suspicious, Commander Sora noted. "Why classify routine mining surveys unless you are hiding something? Significant?" The council observer was taking detailed notes. "If the mining consortium deliberately concealed the true nature of the asteroid field, that would constitute fraud. Contracts signed under fraudulent pretenses are legally void. Furthermore," Elder Hana added, "if they knowingly exposed workers to dangerous quantinium radiation without proper safety measures, they violated galactic labor protection laws." The tide was turning against Thorgrim and Administrator Koss. Their lawyers huddled together, searching for new arguments. But the evidence was overwhelming. "I call for an immediate ruling," Elder Hana said. "The Phylixian child is free under species sovereignty laws. The human's contract is void due to fraud, and together they have the strongest claim to the quantinium discovery." The council observer consulted with his legal advisors for several minutes. Finally, he stood to announce the decision. "Based on the evidence presented, this tribunal finds that Nari of the Phylixian people is a free individual with full legal rights. The mining contract signed by Jinho of Earth is void due to material misrepresentation by the mining consortium, and the joint discovery claim filed by both parties is valid under the Galactic Cooperation Treaty." Cheers erupted from the Phylixian delegation and the enforcement officers. Thorgrim and Administrator Koss stormed out, their lawyers already planning appeals that would likely fail. But the best moment came when Commander Sora handed Jinho and Nari the official documentation. "Congratulations," she said. "You are now the legal owners of the largest known quantinium deposit in the galaxy. What do you plan to do with it?" Jinho and Nari looked at each other, then at the Phylixian refugees who had risked everything to travel here. "We are going to build something that has never existed before," Nari said. "A world where different species work together as true equals." 6 months later, Jinho stood on the observation deck of New Phylixa Station, watching construction ships position the massive quantinium reactors that would power the new colony world. The artificial sun that would warm the planet's surface was nearly complete. Nari joined him at the window. Her golden fur now gleamed with health, and her eyes sparkled with joy instead of fear. She wore the blue robes of a Phylixian scientist and carried data tablets filled with research on interspecies cooperation. "The first colonist ships arrive next week," she reported. "Humans, Phylixians, and 12 other species, all coming to build something new together." "Any regrets?" Jinho asked. Nari smiled and took his hand. Only that it took a slave auction for us to meet. Maybe that was meant to happen, Jinho said. Maybe the universe needed someone willing to sacrifice everything for a stranger to change the way things work. Or maybe, Nari said, the universe just needed to remind us that every life has infinite value. They stood together watching the artificial sun take shape. It was powered by the same quantinium deposits that Nari had awakened with her song. But more importantly, it was powered by the belief that different species could work together if someone was willing to take the first step. Below them, Felixian children played in gardens tended by human engineers. Alien architects worked alongside. Refugee families to design new cities. Former enemies were becoming friends. When asked by journalists why he had risked everything for a slave girl he had never met, Jinho always gave the same answer that had started it all. Because it was right, and sometimes doing what is right changes everything. The universe was vast and often cruel, but in one small corner of space, a human cargo pilot and a Felixian scientist had proven that compassion could be stronger than fear, that cooperation could triumph over exploitation, and that a single act of kindness could light up the stars themselves. Their story spread across the galaxy, inspiring others to look beyond their own species and see the possibilities that existed when different peoples worked together. The slave market still existed in the dark corners of space, but now there were more voices speaking against them. And somewhere in the glow of New Felixa's artificial sun, the old Felixian songs were being taught to children of many species, ensuring that the resonance cry would never be lost again. The slavers had laughed when the alien catgirl cried, but in the end, her tears had washed away their cruelty and watered the seeds of a better universe.